This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask with your host, Dr. Judith Briles. On the show today, you'll find out where book publishing is going and how to take advantage of it. How to identify and avoid publishing predators. What opportunities are emerging as the book trade evolves in new forms. How to avoid losing money and much, much more. Join us now as a variety of publishing pros will deliver insights and strategies to take the author to the next level of publishing. It's your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Brought to you by Author U and the Book Shepherd. And now, here's your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Well, hello everyone. Another fabulous publishing week is flowing for all of us. And as in all our episodes of Author U, your guide to book publishing, our goal is to provide a variety of ahas, insights, tips, and how-tos for you as an author to get publishing and book marketing success. And we have guests with us to help you along on your path. With us today is someone that probably few of you know of, have heard of, but he is an author himself. He's also the new Colorado coordinator for the Tattered Cover Independent Bookstore. John Marcatoni is, he was an editor for Savant Books and for Agnes. Did I pronounce that right, John?
I know. It was a really bad name.
Oh, it's a silent S. All right, a silent S. And he's also a publisher. He's the founder of La Casita Grande, a small press dedicated to Latino authors. So he's as a writer, he's a novelist, he's done playwrights, he's presented his books globally from here in my hometown of Denver to New York City, to Cuba, Puerto Rico, London, and Australia. So with that, let's just kind of jump in because I think that I think it's great that you've got this Latino thread, which I wasn't totally tuned into. And I know, John, at the recent induction of the Colorado Authors Hall of Fame, we had quite a lot of fans of the Latino community there to celebrate Manuel Ramos and his books as he was being inducted. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad we were able to work it out.
Yeah, so let's kind of probe into, so as an indie author, what are some of the evolutions that you've seen?
Well, I mean, I kind of got started with my own publishing journey around 2004, 2005. And so, you know, the internet obviously was very different then. There definitely weren't as many resources for writers. There also indie presses as we know them now, and also self-publishing as well, was just a completely different beast, as I'm sure you remember.
When I started, self-publishing was a bad juju, and right. It was the vanity press, and any respectable author would go, no, we don't go down that route. So a lot.
Yeah, that was definitely still the case, even in 04, 05, definitely. Mm-hmm. I think the attitude shift towards self-publishing is pretty recent, and honestly, you know, I had to evolve about that myself. I mean, I definitely grew up more in an environment where, you know, if you were a writer, you had to go the traditional route, and it wasn't respectable. What you were doing wasn't respectable unless somebody else validated it, which ultimately that's really what getting published in a magazine or getting published by a traditional publisher or a small press even, that's really the source of that pride is just like, oh, somebody else likes me. It's not just me. And when I started thinking of it that way was when, for myself, like the stigma of self-publishing kind of fell away, because I was like, well, if it's basically just I need the approval of somebody else, I mean, that's not a good that's not a good perspective to have just in your own life. You know, if you're always looking for the approval of others, and you can't do anything without the approval of others, you know, so why would we do that as creatives?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's for sure, and it has changed. I've confessed many times I'm a recovered publishing snob. I used to believe only legitimate people published with New York, which is where I got my, my growing up legs, and it wasn't. I crossed over in 2000 and went, but I never thought of myself as a self-publisher. I created my own independent press and started for the purpose of just publishing my own books, and then we published other books for other authors. But it really came from there, and but I think we need to say to all of you who, whether you're going to call yourself I'm only going to do traditional publishing, or if I'm going to go some form of the hybrid route, or if I'm going to be a self-publisher, or you're going to go full out and become that independent publishing press of your own stuff, is that there is no excuse for mediocrity. That's my opinion, John. There is no excuse for mediocrity. Your books do not have to look like they're self-published. They should not look like they're self-published, because you are competing with 1.6 million books that are being published every year. 1.6 million books. That's a lot of books.
Yeah. Well, and I completely agree with you. Like, and making a corner for myself with Latino authors, as well as African American authors, like that's something where the conversation around quality gets a little bit sticky, because some people are very. I feel like, especially in the Latino community, there's a real sensitivity around bringing up the whole idea of quality, because there are some people who feel, and I had a specific incident of this once where there is a Latino book review website. I'm not going to say what it's called, but it's centered around doing reviews for Latino books. And I had one of my books reviewed by them, and I asked the guy, because his review was just really generalized. You know, he had no specifics. And it also, even though it was kind of a net positive, in reading the review, I was like, I can tell this guy didn't like my book. It's very like lukewarm enthusiasm. And so I asked him about that. I was like, hey, what did you really think of my book? Because I didn't get a sense of it from your review. And he was like, well, you know, it's not really my cup of tea, but I don't want to write negative reviews because Latino authors already have so much negativity thrown at them, and we need more positivity. And that attitude is well-meaning, but ultimately, I feel it's like that old phrase, the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah.
And it's that in practice, and it's also, you know, if we can't tell each other that something's bad, that there is objectively something wrong with a work, and it's not just our subjective taste. If we can't even do that, how can we get anywhere?
You can't. I mean, I don't believe in trying to match the low hanging fruit. That is not my philosophy. But every author should be continuing on in their walk that path to improve, from their writing to their visibility, to their branding, to their influencing, to marketing, to fill in the blank. I mean, I don't, I'd give them no leeway. And I'm sorry. Step up to the plate, people. Yeah. You got to step up to the plate. Agree. So, Yeah, and I know it's tough. I know it's tough for everybody out here, but we've all started. And heck, when I look at my first books, that St. Martin's Press was my first publisher, and I still love their cover. I still love their cover. I cannot say that from every publisher that I worked with out of New
Yeah.
York. There are some that I apologize from the stage about. So,
Yeah.
but
Well, I think you're touching on something really important, which is that as vaunted as we place New York publishers, they're not all great either. Not everything they produce is wonderful or top shelf. We sometimes mythologize New York a bit too much. As much as I love it,
I know.
There's New York is filled with mediocrity too.
I am so glad you've said that because, and just think of the movie industry. How many of you have ever gone to a movie thinking, who in the devil put the money behind this sucker? I am always amazed how projects, and the phrase is green-lighted, how projects, book projects, film projects, creative projects get green-lighted. And I think we'll go back to your reviewer who said, well, your book really wasn't my cup of tea, or whatever phrase you use, because they're not all. And that's where a lot of authors do get in trouble. All right, we're coming up, John, to our first break. What I want to do is that I wanted people to get a little sense that you have been in their footsteps. You know what it's like to get dinged.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
You know what it's like to have the wrong fit. We've all had them. We've absolutely all had them. But let's do a transition when we come back, because you do have a wonderful position. You do have a very influencing position here in my state of Colorado. But it also can transcend throughout the country of dealing with book buyers and booksellers and bookstores. Let's kiss on that when we come back. All right?
For sure.
All right. This is Judith Briles. You're listening to Author You, Your Guide to Book Publishing, and we'll be right back.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, with your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Is there a book in you? Or another? Author You shows you how to create, develop, and publish your book without being hoodwinked. If you already have a book out, you will find a supportive and brainstorming community that is connected and creative, no matter where you live. Author You brings in national experts for its book camps and annual Author You extravaganza. It has regular meetings and delivers webinars for its members on timely topics. Through Author You's extensive network, members enjoy exclusive benefits, including significant discounts for a variety of services necessary to publishing. Author You is the premier authoring resource in the country, creating community, education, guidance, vision, and success for the serious author. If you want to create a book that has pizzazz, punch, and panache, Author You is for you. Timely author and publishing tips and articles are posted on its social media platforms, and it is free. Discover Author You, where authors go to become seriously successful. Join Author You today at authoryou.org.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
With me is John Mark Tony, and we are talking about really bookstores, how to work with them, how to tap into maybe special events that might be coming along that you might not know about, and maybe the questions to ask in that. And he is this year he stepped in to coordinate a lot of those items. He is the Colorado liaison for the Tattered Cover and working with authors and getting their books in. So I guess, John, maybe the question I want to ask you is how should an author approach a bookstore to get them to carry their book?
Well, if you're a traditionally published author, I mean, you go through the book buyer, and that's a fairly simple, straightforward process. The thing with indie writers is there's the whole matter of consignment. And the reason for it really is as an indie writer, you don't typically have an organic following. You don't typically have a large organic following. And the reason why a traditional author can just contact the book buyer of a bookstore and have them deal directly with the publisher is because there's the expectation, fair or not, that, well, they're with this publisher, so therefore there'll be a demand. With indie authors, there's a higher bar to prove that. And unfortunately, most bookstores, just like most publishers, they'll just put your book on the shelf and not actively market it. And just like a lot of publishers will put out your book, but they don't really market it. They expect you to do it, right?
Of course.
And the onus is really placed on you.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the true shell shocks for authors. I've been saying this for years. Kiddos, you are the chief marketing officer, and you have to push it. Don't expect your publisher, but there's still this belief, and it's a myth now. Unless you are a big boy or a big girl in the branding celebrity market out there, that they're not going to do much for you, if anything.
Yeah. Well, and, I think the perpetuation of that expectation is also from the way that writers are portrayed in media. Because, think about Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City. She's supposed to just be a magazine writer. That's it. Like, she's not Susan Collins, or some like big named author, and yet she has this massive apartment and seems to make very good money as a magazine writer. Which, if you've ever written for magazines, they don't make a lot of money. But if you look at depictions of writers in movies and TV shows, they're almost always like flocked by fans. They're pretty well off. There's just the impression that, well, being a writer can actually be this super lucrative thing, and that it's for everybody. And that's just not the case. We don't really get realistic depictions of what the writing world is, and particularly how much you're ignored. And so a lot of writers come in thinking like, oh, I'll be like Carrie Bradshaw, where I'm able to have this big apartment and live in Manhattan, and then they see the reality is like, oh, this is nothing like what TV shows are.
I know. I know that we do live in an unreal world a lot of times, I think. And I think reality TV has so morphed people's mentality, and it's so wrong.
It's so wrong. Absolutely. But going back to the thing with bookstores is, we have to be honest about the state of bookstores, just like we have to be honest about the state of publishing. And the state of things is that bookstores do not have the same centrality in the culture that they used to have. And retail all around is suffering. So booksellers, just like publishers, have to come up with new ways of more actively working with their writers and helping them. And that's really at the heart of the program that I've been developing at Tattered Cover, is to be not only more accountable, but also more active in working with local authors.
And that's what they need. If someone like you, who's that liaison, who can be kind of almost like a mentor, I think, and bringing you through and maybe do some reality checks. So, with that said, what are do you have kind of a laundry list, John, of some of the common mistakes authors do ask in approaching someone like you to have their book carried in the store?
So first and foremost, don't just show up and drop off your book. It's not welcome. Typically, and I'll speak specifically for Tattered Cover, we have on our website what we're looking for and what we want. And I mean, I can't speak to anything in the past, but with my program, I have a submission period, which ends on October 10th. And that's our fall submission period going forward. It's for the first 6 months of the year. And then the whole month of March will be the next submission period. So if you're a local author and you want to get into Tattered Cover, those are your two times. There is a form that you follow. And that form is kind of a deconstructed query letter, asking about marketing, asking about what the book is about, wanting to see what the cover looks like. And these are all things that I'm doing to get a good judgment of, is this an author that, one, I want to work with, and two, has real passion for promoting their work. Because there are certainly plenty of writers who kind of just put the onus on us to get their book out there, or the things that they want to do promotional wise aren't exactly effective, like it's a little too passive on their end as well. And what I mean by that are authors that rely way too much just on social media to promote their work, as opposed to going to fairs and conferences and things like that, or just to public events, and so follow the steps that are there for the bookstore, but don't just assume that you can show up and just hand me your book and I'm going to be cool with it. I think it really comes down to etiquette sometimes. I am a person just like you are as a writer. I am also a person with a job with other duties and responsibilities outside of my job. And so respect my time and respect, hey, I might not be able to get back with you. I might not be able to meet with you if you just show up. But if you reach out to me and, I'm always open to answering questions. I'm always open to an author saying, hey, I'm a little confused by what's on the website. I would like to ask you for clarification. I'm more than happy to answer those kinds of things because you're respecting me as a person. And, just like authors want to be seen as people and have their time respected, you do the same with dealing with bookstores or dealing with publishers. And if you do that, then, hey, we'll be really responsive and we'll be really helpful for you. So I think that's one of the biggest things. The other thing is, really be prepared. Be prepared for what your plan is with this book, just like you should be prepared when you're putting that book together. Going back to the whole thing about quality, a lot of the stuff that I'm asking for in these queries is about quality control. And I want to set up a Colorado author's bookshelf at Tattered Cover that can stand alongside any of the other shelves in the store. and that has an aesthetically pleasing quality that people will want to approach it.
I love that idea. I mean, I just wrote this down, big post-it sticky note, poop, right up on my computer. So Colorado Authors Bookshelf. So everyone, even if you're not, we have people who listen all over the world. If you don't live in my home state of Colorado, and so you're not technically a Colorado author, but you may be in Wisconsin. So what bookstore are you thinking about in Wisconsin that you could approach? And how about a Wisconsin Authors Bookshelf and see the idea if it's not already there? I love that idea.
Yeah, and it should be something that's common in every bookstore. Like every bookstore around the country should have a vested interest in their local authors. But to kind of expand beyond just submitting, as bookstores, we really need to engage our communities. And local authors are the best tool that we have to engage our cities and towns directly. So one of the things that I'm making very central to this is, we have story times at our stores. So I have children's authors, like lining them up to do the story time. That's how parents and kids get familiar with your work. Doing things like when we have a book launch, having there be multiple writers. You have the headliner whose book is what's being launched, but, have one or two openers who are also local authors who can kind of share their work a little bit. And that gives them some exposure as well. Also doing things like open mic nights, doing things like the Writer Salon series, which is entirely around community engagement. We're going to have some authors at our next one. And the Writer Salon is a themed event where authors get to present on that theme. It may link to their book, it may not. But their book is there, it's present. But they're getting to do things like this month will be telling ghost stories and poems and getting to know people in that way, where people are like, oh man, I really like their presentation. I really like them as a person. I want to check out their book. And making that personal connection.
Yeah, let me hold on that. We're going to take our next break, but I love that idea of bringing it all together. And what you brought up is so essential. Authors need to reach out. We'll be right back.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Discover the power of you and your book at the Judith Briles Unplugged events. Each summer, Judith Briles Book Marketing Unplugged unfolds over 3 intensive days working with just Judith. You get publishing strategies, author and book platforms, book marketing panache and pizzazz, and authoring tools to take you and your book to RockStar success. In the fall and winter, Judith Briles Speaking Unplugged includes Judith as your coach and mentor during 2 powerful days. You will learn how to structure a speech, how to create openings and closings, how to find gigs that pay you and sell your books, and you will get one-on-one coaching. Go to thebookshepherd.com and click on the Events tab to learn how to participate at the next Unplugged Workshop event.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Coming up, you'll hear more about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Okay, so here we are. We're really talking about, I think, the nuts and bolts and the meat of really working with your local bookstores to bring your book to life. So, John, I'm going to have you come back and take over here and continue on. You were talking about the writers, and one of the things that I was mentioning before we went back to break here is that it is so important to hang out with other authors and writers. It's so important to see what's going on because, authors want to help other authors and we cross genres. I mean, I'm a nonfiction writer and I write business, I write writing in the publishing arena. I don't have the fiction gene skill, but boy, I love to cross help over people in other genres because a lot of the ideas that I have would be totally applicable for them in their marketing or pushing or even connecting. And I think authors forget that.
Oh yeah, well, and it's not just it's not just other writers that you should be spending time with. It's also getting to know the real gatekeepers, getting to know editors, getting to know publishers, getting to know your friendly local author coordinator at Better Cover. Reaching out to those people, you can just learn a whole lot of things that maybe your other writer friends don't know or don't realize. And also, when you get to know people like editors, because editors, even if they're at the lowest level, they have the ear of the acquisition editor. They have the ear of the editor in chief. And if they know you and they like you, like they can help you out. And that's also, in terms of like media coverage, if you're trying to get media coverage for your book and you personally know a reporter, you can get in that publication more than likely than if you're just hitting somebody up and you're unknown to them. So authors, as much as writers can be introverts, you do got to socialize a bit. You really do. And the more that you socialize smartly and reach out to people and get to know them on the level of not just their job, but get to know them as people, the more opportunities that you really make for yourself.
Oh. All right. So with that said, that like you've revealed that you've got these certain windows. So that doesn't mean that instantly they're going to pick up your book. There's a process. Right. Yeah.
Right. So for this window that we're in right now, the September 10th to October 10th, those are the books for the first half of the year. So it's going to be 50 books total. And I can tell you right now, I've already selected about 25 of them. Well, 25 is going to be what we put on the shelves from January to March. And then April to May, or April to June, will be another 25 books. And then the submission period in March, that will be for the latter half of the year.
So what you have to really be really clear. So for the author, I'm just going to tag on to here. You have to be really clear for your own promotional stuff that whatever you do is you have to be aware. So you coordinate the same time frame and you push out. And then the other thing I'm just going to have to really say that if your goal, well, I've said this before, but it's been a while. If your goal is to be in a bookstore, is it your ego speaking? Or is it this really you want a partner? And you need to answer that question. And if it's your ego, I'm going to tell you to take a pass. Because to be successful with a bookstore is you have to create a partnering relationship where you, dear author, are going to work your tush off to drive people to that bookstore to get your books. And John, I can't tell you how many authors say, but boy, if they buy it from my website, I'll make more money. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about developing a long-term relationship so that when you have another book coming along, they'll be interested immediately in supporting you because you supported them. Does that make sense?
Right.
Did I get that right?
No, absolutely. And, to piggyback a bit on that, yes, you can make more money if you sell a book through your website. But if you are just online, you are not making as deep of relationships with people as you will at a bookstore where you are front facing the community and interacting with the community. And the great thing about working with a bookstore is if you can build up a following through that bookstore in your city, you can also find ways to do that in other cities. And link up with other writers in other states and be able to do like a little mini book tour and it'd be effective.
I am so glad you said that. Some of the most successful self-published authors started exactly that way. It was the old, cases in the trunk of the car.
Right.
and working themselves around, connecting with that local store, bringing people in. Zap, they're all sold out pretty soon. Then the local bookstores start buzz because they talk amongst themselves. Isn't that right, John?
Oh, yeah. Yes. And one of the things that Colorado has going for it that not every state does is this is a state that people really, really desire to visit. People love this state when they visit. It's beautiful. There's so many things to do. And they want to take home with them a piece of Colorado. And so if you're, when you're in a bookstore, you're not just reaching people who live here in Denver. You're also reaching all of the tourists that come through. And if you're able to engage those people, they take that book back to wherever it is that they're from. And that can be the next place that you go to. Hey, you sold like 3 books to somebody from Wisconsin, and maybe they're like in Milwaukee or something. Find out what the local bookstore in Milwaukee is, or I'm sorry, Indie Bookstore in Milwaukee is.
Yes.
And maybe see about gaining some interest there.
It's just smart. Okay, so now we're going to go back to what I said several minutes ago. You are the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer. Your book is your product. How do you want to position it and create the highway all over the place so you become the buzz factor? And literally, that is how so many very successful authors who started the self-published route and went on to sell their books to New York. That's what happened. Trunks in the cases in the trunk. And by the way, all of you should be carrying at least a case of books in your car. I'm just going to say that you all should have a case of books in your car because you may meet, the John Marcatoni in your city, and you can hand him a book, and then you start following up and build a relationship, etc. All right, so you've got, we talked a little bit about the new program that you've got going on at the Tatted Cover. What are some of the challenges, though, that you're seeing that we small presses? And I'm a small press. I'm an independent press. I've published, oh my gosh, maybe 20 different titles, 25 different titles. What's the challenge you see for us coming out? And I want to go back to when John and I were talking earlier about the 1.6 million books that are published every year. That's with an ISBN. That's not the slew that are coming out for the people who are publishing, a book every 5 days, and there's no editing, there's no nothing, etc. But, that is 4,600 books a day. 4,600 plus a day, 365 days a year. What are you doing to stand out? John, what do you see authors do to make them differentiate?
Well, I would actually add something to to this scenario. Because, you brought up the 1.6 million books a year. Well, there's another number to keep in mind, which is in 2020, the best-selling book overall of all books was Barack Obama's memoir. And it sold 2.5 million copies. That's it. If that had come out 10 years ago even, it would have been 4 or 5 times that, right? Just because more people read, but also because you had less books. The glut of books is devaluing everybody's sales because there's just so many. Right. So technology is both our friend and our adversary. Technology is allowing for us to potentially reach even more people. But going back to some things that we've already brought up, if you rely way too much on online and you're not engaging the place that you live in, then you are missing out on the most natural fan base for yourself. People love supporting local artists. It's a huge thing in cities all over the country. That's why when you go to restaurants, if they get their food from a local farm, they always advertise it because people feel good about supporting their own communities. So as a writer, if you're not engaging your community, if you're not going out and, not just going to author events, but supporting all the arts in your community, or going out to different conferences or business functions, or just being active in whatever is going on in your town or city, then you are missing out if you're not doing that. And that is the best way to get noticed.
So let me make a suggestion to all of you, wherever you are. Have you thought about putting together really a local event, a collective? They could be like-minded genres, or they could be a mixed match, and bring them together. I mean, right now, as you're listening to this, it's fall time. Usually the weather is fairly decent in fall, although in Colorado we could have a couple of blizzards by now, but that's okay.
It looks like next week we might get the first one, actually.
Oh, no. All right, but let me just share what I do. Every fall I do an author's tea in my home, and I invite several local authors. Most of them I have had my hands on their books. They're there, but I'm prepared to cheerlead and support. And the rest of the story when we come back.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, with your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Are you confused about publishing options? Do you know which printing option is best for your book? Does your stomach flip when you think about selling books? Or do you feel overwhelmed with what to do about book marketing and publicity? Get the answers and much more. Get them, and from someone who knows publishing inside and out, from both the traditional and independent sides, how to make a successful book. You can't do it alone without paying the price. You can spend your money creating a book that turns out to be so-so, or you can create a book that looks and feels classy, builds your brand and platform, and is a success, a bestseller. It is your choice. You choose. If you want author and publishing success, you want Judith Briles as your book coach. Sign up for her weekly blogs and e-zine at thebookshepherd.com. The book shepherding concept is simple. The publishing world is changing, and so must you. You need an experienced shepherd and guide to collaborate with you as you create, strategize, develop, publish, and achieve your publishing goals. Publishing is riddled with obstacles, sometimes nightmares for the author. You do not need more problems. You want solutions. Dr. Judith Briles will shepherd you through the maze and chaos. At times, she has had to step in and rescue a book that has been sabotaged by a publisher, by a publishing service provider, and sometimes even by the author. If you want author and book success, connect with her today at thebookshepherd.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
With me is John Marcdoni, who is the voice, really, of the Colorado Author Coordinator for the fabulously successful Tattered Cover independent bookstore here. With how many stores do you have now, John?
We have 5 stores.
We have 5 stores located in the Denver metro area, and also, are we including what you have at DIA, the airport?
No, that's not including those. It's also not including the holiday pop-up that we're doing in Park Meadows. And we also are expected to have a Westminster store within the next couple months.
All right. So they have different varieties of people to go, but I know that I have left many a dollar at Denver International Airport when I've gone through, looking for something, and it's much more than what some of the standard bookstores you see in airports around the country. So, but just different ideas that you can do to be enormously successful. So, John, if I was to do, what I was going to say is my author's tea. So every fall I do an author's tea. Sometimes and I always do it on a Saturday afternoon because there is no competition with a Bronco football game. That's always been my deal. Sometimes we've landed on Halloween, and we authors came dressed. I was a dragon one year. In costume, but it really does. And here's the idea that you could get people together. Each of the authors gets, like in my case, it's anywhere from 30 to 45 seconds to talk to the crowd about their book, what's the benefit for the author, who's the ideal it's for, because we're thinking really holiday shopping here. We're pitching holiday shopping and going forward with that. And I'm the cook. I do a full author's tea. I have food, unbelievable food. It's like they come for, Leonard, lunch and dinner in between. I always do it in the afternoon. I have a variety of teas. I always have a punch. We don't serve any alcohol. People have a great time. And authors average 40 to 50 book sales. And we handle all the book sales. We don't let them diddle around with that. If their job is to be the promotion person for their book, I have someone who handles credit cards. We get checks out to these authors within a week. And we even collect sales tax and pay the good state of Colorado in the process. So it can be done. Takes some coordination. But it's an idea for all of you, whatever state you live in, your location. How about doing a gathering? I mean, that we're in fall time is huge sales. Are you taking advantage of it? So, just
and that sounds like a great time. But also to add to that, if you say don't really have a house or a lot of extra money to put together an event like that by yourself, get together with a few other writer friends and pull your resources together. There's a lot of different varieties of doing something like what you're talking about that can fit any sort of budget or location.
Heck, here's an idea for location. Check out your local library. if you want to do this as a co-op. Check out your local
Yeah.
library. Guess what? They have large meeting rooms. Most of them do. And they are FREE. They will allow you to bring food in, and you can do those kind of things. They have the tables to set up. I mean, it's an ideal thing, and they have plenty of free parking. So you have to think of this kind of stuff in the process of doing it. I love the idea, and heck. I'm thinking maybe I should do more than one a year and go to the library and support the library too. So
yeah, well, and if you're an author listening to this and you're in the Denver metro area and you put something like this together, invite Judith.
Yes.
Like if you know of these figures in your community, like invite them.
Yeah, who have a following and can bring a crowd with them. And that, by the way, that's another deal. That in my deal event, all my authors, and of course it's in my home, so it's a vaccinated event this year. And I am absolutely ruthless about that because I have someone who lives in my household who is high risk. And I have had several live events, and I am, knock on wood, thrilled to say that not one person has gotten sick. Not one, because we follow that policy. So with that said, that you can bring it in, but everyone is required to bring other people because this is called marketing co-op. And so whether you're working with a store like the Fabulous Tattered Cover, that your job, dear author, is to bring a crowd too. Don't expect them to do all the work ever.
Yeah. And the thing that, these ideas that you're talking about, and that also I'm talking about, like, they can sound very much like you're trying to make friends like a vulture, or you're trying to put yourself out there like a vulture. It can sound like that. It can sound like really ruthless. It doesn't have to be that way, for one thing. But also, when we talk about doing some of these community outreach things, and engaging in networking, keep in mind that even if you are doing something that benefits you or potentially benefits you, doesn't mean that you have to take the humanity out of it. Like, all these things that we're talking about doing, it can help you as a writer, it can help you with sales, but also it just makes your life better, like your life fuller. You get to know your city better. You get to know the people in your community better. And this also just has a very personal, positive effect.
Yeah. John, you are so right. As you know, I just finished the Authors Hall of Fame event. And a lot of the authors were inducted I had never heard of. But as that were nominated, because all nominations come from the public. And if you don't read in the genre, because, and you would know that we had several people from the Latino community nominated this year. One was inducted. I didn't know anything about his work, but I sure do now. And I'm thrilled to know more about him. I'm not a sci-fi reader at all. My husband is a devout sci-fi reader. I mean, we have amazing stories, magazines dated in the 1930s that he has collected. Devout. And we had two major sci-fi people nominated, inducted. One was Kevin J. Anderson, who happens to have his fingers on the big Dune movie coming out this fall.
That's pretty cool.
And he is the co-writer with Brian Hubert of all the new Dune books, with all that going on. But I don't. That's not a genre that I read. But by golly, I have had more fun interacting and getting to know Kevin and his wife, and those kind of things going on. So that's the beauty of the community. And so that's why you need to get out of your genres and open up, because the other genres actually will bring in gems to you with your own writing and marketing. Just saying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And as a writer, just getting outside of your comfort zone and the genres that you like that always helps your storytelling, because you'll see things that writers are doing that you can adopt. It might blow your socks off. You're just like, man, I didn't even know I could do that as a storyteller.
I know.
And so, it helps in a number of ways. Absolutely.
I'm writing this. I'm writing this down. Tips to blow your socks off. That's funny, John. All right. So we have 3 minutes to go here. Can you, any final tips you want to give to authors to work with bookstores and reach out?
It really is, you get what you put into it. And we as a bookstore, we as a company, at Tattered Cover, we recognize that we also have to give back to our authors, because in much the same way that publishers are starting to realize that, hey, if I don't actually do things for my writers, then they can just go self-publish. Bookstores have to be the same way. Like, we are only as effective in our communities as we put into those communities. And so, this is a great time if you're in the Denver metro area, and even if you're outside of the Denver metro area, but you're in Colorado, it is a great time to approach our store, because we are putting so many resources into community engagement and into building long-lasting relationships with writers. So this is just a great time to reach out to us. I hope that the people listening in today do that. I hope to hear from them.
All right. So the first step is that start reaching out to build a long-term relationship. So it's not short-term. You're thinking long-term, because, your book, I have a dear friend in San Francisco. Her book is celebrating her 25th anniversary, and the publisher, which is Random, is coming back to push out a special celebratory issue of her book to do that. So she will start a whole new launching coming around. She will reaching out to all the independent. She's a big indie bookstore lover in the Bay Area to start setting up a whole book tour for her book. How cool is that? And she wouldn't be able to do it if she didn't have the relationship already in place with all these people.
Absolutely.
So with that, all right, John, thank you so much for being with us today. I hope everyone will be in touch. How do they get it? Where would they go? Just tatteredcover.com?
Yeah, if you go to tatteredcover.com, under our programs, it has the Colorado Author Program link. You can select that. That has my email, john.marcantoni@tatteredcover.com. Feel free to email me anytime, or submit your book on our forum if it's before the 10th.
Okay. Thank you for being with me today, John.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
All right. Remember, everyone, your authoring and published success is up to you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for being a part of Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles.